Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are up and at 'em on a Monday here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. We got a great show here tonight. So much I've learned over the weekend with divisional round as we're going into championship weekend, and then also Ohio State and Notre Dame tonight. Should be a fun and exciting one here tonight. Chase is going to be joining us here in a couple minutes, just running a little bit behind, but nonetheless, we've got a great show here tonight. So, of course, most important day of the year, the presidential inaugural year for President Donald Trump, and on MLK Day, lots and lots of stuff going on. But we got a lot to really truthfully talk about. So I want to start with this while we're waiting up on Chase here in just a bit. But I want to talk about the Washington Commanders and what I've learned from this weekend. What a game they played against the Detroit Lions. I mean, I think we've kind of moved into that conversation where Jaden Daniels may arguably be one of the greatest rookie quarterbacks we've ever seen. And Jaden Daniels coming out of LSU, I was not truthfully sure how Jaden Daniels was honestly going to end up here in the league. I knew he would be a very good quarterback, but you're going into an organization that is brand new everything. So Jaden Daniels, one of the things that I've heard about him is that he's a big-time competitor. And what we've learned from the time of watching him in Arizona State and watching him in LSU win a Heisman Trophy, I mean, the question mark I had is how tough is Jaden Daniels? Like, we've seen him get hit really hard in college when it came to the SEC because they produced very good defensive players, very good offensive players. There's been no doubt in my mind when it came to the SEC. Their competition is one of a kind. So to me, Jaden Daniels gets drafted number 2 overall by the Washington Commanders, who have a brand new ownership, brand new GM, brand new coach, and now they've got their new franchise quarterback, and everything is perfectly aligning itself. And what I watched with Jaden Daniels all season long was the kind of thing that Washington originally, they flirted with the idea of acquiring Lamar Jackson before they gave him his contract at Baltimore. And so once Jaden Daniels was available, of course, they had to take him at number 2. And I had a lot of people on this show about a few months back before the season started. I had Anthony Armstrong, I had Lake Lewis, and they all told me great things about Jaden Daniels. They said they absolutely love the kid. He's poised, he's matured, and he is somebody that you could rally around and build your franchise around. And so I believed it. But I never believed he'd get this far. I don't think any of us did. I originally said when Washington started the season, they would finish second in the NFC East. That was a check mark we were correct about. And then all of a sudden he goes up on this tear, and now they're back in the NFC Championship game. And they're going to be playing against their division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. Who would have thought this would happen? So, like I said, I think Jaden Daniels has arguably become one of the greatest rookie quarterbacks we've seen ever. For him to do what, and then this is the thing, Washington came as an organization who was going through such terrible habits since 1992 when Dan Snyder purchased this organization and turned them literally down into the ground. And then they get new ownership with the Josh Harris group, the same ones who own the Sixers and the same ones who basically own a couple of other franchises in Philadelphia. They're techie guys. And for them to do what they've done this year to where Washington with a rookie quarterback and to be in the NFC Championship game for the first time in a long time is just unheard of. Nobody ever thought about this. So I think Jaden Daniels, he's a one of a kind. And something that I think Washington fans, I feel so happy for them to have to go through that much hell and turmoil from their previous ownership with Dan Snyder, because trust me, all the stories I've heard from the sexual allegations to the uproaring prices in practice and in like the regular season, who wants to be in that kind of organization? That's where everybody really dismissed the Washington Commanders for a long time, ended up changing their name. I think Jaden Daniels is giving you something to really look forward to in the near future for like the next 5 years ahead. And I love this. I love this for Washington fans. Washington fans should be feeling very good about themselves. Now you're getting into next weekend against your division rival Philadelphia Eagles, who we'll talk a little bit more later on the show. But there is so much to really look at in the front windshield for the Commanders' future. So, okay, I want to talk about arguably, I think, one of the most prolific games with two of the arguably the most prolific quarterbacks in the NFL, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But I want to talk mostly about Josh Allen. Josh Allen's moved into this conversation now where I think he's starting to figure this out. And you got to think, you're in upstate Buffalo, very cold weather. Not a lot of people really want to play in that kind of weather at all when you're in January, February. And so Buffalo, look at what the Baltimore Ravens looked like in this game. They were highly talented. They were throwing the ball a ton. And I know everybody's been kind of throwing Mark Andrews under the bus because of a few drops and because of like the performances, but two prolific quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Lamar, I'll get to him in a second, but Lamar did everything right. He did a lot of things right. And eventually he is going to get into that position to where he'll get that monkey off his back. But Josh Allen, what I think we're starting to see from him is now he's taking full control of the game. All right. In Buffalo and in cold, snowy weather, where it's not really a whole lot of fun passing the ball because you're not sure if you're going to get enough grip on it as a quarterback. But Josh Allen, what they were able to do, they were able to revert to the ground and pound game to where James Cook and Josh Allen, they're both running the football on the ground. It's snowy weather, and sometimes it's hard to really run routes and be consistent in snowy weather. What Josh Allen is doing right now at this point, and you know there's a huge task ahead against the Kansas City Chiefs, but Josh Allen has moved into this position now where he's taken the game by storm. He's now leading the Buffalo Bills into a position to where they could potentially beat the Kansas City Chiefs next weekend. They could be the team to represent in the Super Bowl. But of course, they got to get past the big giant, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. But we have seen them beat them in the regular season, but it's a different type of atmosphere when you're playing them in postseason. But the Buffalo Bills ran the ball efficiently, didn't quite pass a ton. But Josh Allen, I think to me, he is in this position now where he has all the makings, everything in front of him to potentially beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you think about it, and looking at just the box score itself, because when I study a lot of this stuff and I look at the box score, it was clear to me both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both have played a very good game. But here's the thing. Josh Allen, he didn't even have to throw a ton. 16 of 22, 127 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But here's what's funny is that every team that lost this weekend all had a turnover. And practically Buffalo had to play their perfect game. It may not have looked perfect on the box score, but they had to play a perfect game. No turnovers, nothing. Efficient on the ground. That's what they've done. So Josh Allen, who had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game and no turnovers, I think Buffalo is in this prime position to where now they face Kansas City next week, and there is no turning back from here. So Buffalo, I think they got the makings to be a Super Bowl team. And this was a team everybody sold their stock on because they get rid of Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Locker room seems to be up straight and right. Defense looks young. Now, I know they ended up losing a key piece on injury, but let's see what next weekend gives us. But I have a feeling, I have a very strong gut feeling Buffalo has this making to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I really do. And it's really going to be something interesting because the NFC with the Eagles and the Commanders, if this becomes a Bills-Commanders Super Bowl, we're partying it up like it's 1992. And it's been a long time coming for both these franchises. I don't know about you, but when I watch Josh Allen get into the position that he is in, no turnovers, going on the ground and pound, running the football, this is kind of the thing you have to be if you are the Buffalo Bills to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Even if I'm not going to the air as much, I've got to now have a healthier run game. And that's exactly with what Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, hell, even with Sean McDermott to be now in the AFC Championship game for the first time in a long time, this is where the Bills can't afford to lose this game against Kansas City. And if they do that, now the AFC, it's going to be a lot stronger and tougher come next season. But I think this is the prime position the Buffalo Bills find themselves in. It's going to be incredible. Hopefully you can hear me on my end.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be incredible to see a Commanders-Bills Super Bowl. Like it's been, dude, I've been looking forward to a Lions Super Bowl for a long time. And, now after Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are gone, because did you get the news today about Ben Johnson?
Oh, yeah. I listen, we got that up on the show today. This is why we had to have a show tonight, because
with them gone,
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see who is going to take over for that Detroit Lions team and if they are going to be able to take it to the next level, because one of the main reasons why they lost this game is they had 9 defensive starters out for that game, and they could not stop anybody in the secondary. Mm-hmm. And I was rooting so hard for the Lions, but now I'm hoping, crossing my fingers and praying that the Commanders can pull it off against the Eagles. Because, dude, the craziest thing that I thought about is C.J. Stroud has been in the league for 2 years now.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels has been in the league for 1.
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud has 2 playoffs wins. Jaden Daniels has 2. If he gets next week, he'll have 3 playoff wins.
And this is the thing.
This
has never been done by a rookie quarterback.
Never. Big Ben was the last one to make it to the AFC Championship his rookie year and could not make it to the Super Bowl. And he was the latest of those quarterbacks. But, like, with Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud, they made it to the playoffs and had more playoff wins in 2 years and 1 year than Lamar Jackson has had in the 8 years that he's been in the league. And that's absolutely insane. And somebody messaged me yesterday, they're like, hey, it's a team sport. I'm like, yes, but what is the most important position on the field? Because the most important position on the field can make or break a team. Now, if you are as good as you say you are, your quarterback play should be able to lead you to a playoff win or playoff success. Look at Jaden Daniels. Look at the Washington Commanders.
Yep.
Nobody's seen the Commanders be this good this year. Nobody.
No.
Not a single person expected.
Like I said, we were on this show before the season started, and I said the Commanders would be the second place team in the NFC East.
I think I did.
And they were capable of getting into the playoffs. But I didn't even think they'd get this far already in the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. And like with the quarterback play, like this Commanders team is not as talented as that Ravens team. It is not.
But you know what I do give credit for them on? They got some veteran leadership. Because with Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, by the way, Terry McLaurin could have tested the free agent market. He could have. But then he signed the extension to stay in Washington. And by the way, Diami Brown, with their number 2 receiver, how much of an unsung hero has he become already in the postseason? He's become a very good wide receiver. And then the other thing is, and I think this is also what's going to be exciting about this Philadelphia team, because they've got one of the tight ends who's won a Super Bowl and who's also been in this position in the championship, and that's Zach Ertz. How do you think they're going to end up feeling with that? And the other thing is, too, the run game with Brian Robinson and with Austin Eckler, I think a lot of these things are starting to fully align for itself. That's why I think the future is very bright in Washington. Win or loss, the fact that they are so ahead of schedule like this, to where now they've watched everything in the postseason. How do you think free agents are honestly going to feel by the time Washington, if win or loss, if they get to the Super Bowl or if they lose this weekend, how many people want to come to Washington? Healthier organization. It's so incredible to me what a complete culture change looks like. It's really incredible.
I mean, during the trade deadline, there were like teams like that, or like players were contacting their agents saying like, "Hey, get me to Washington as much as you can. Like, I want to be there because I want to be a part of that culture and that regime." And this is what I'm talking about, though, because like I got in an argument with somebody on TikTok about Lamar Jackson and his non-playoff success and everything. When they said it's a team sport, I'm like, but when you've got one of the most important positions on the field, you have a guy who's been a 2-time MVP, a potential 3-time MVP potential, and you're telling me that he can't get past the first or second round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he's only done it once, and that's because they were the 1 seed. Like, dude, if Jaden Daniels was on the Ravens right now, I guarantee you the Ravens would be in the AFC Championship.
Well, here's where this is where I kind of slowed down up on this before we end up going up on the break. But I had to think about this over the weekend. And see, and what's funny about this is the AFC and the NFC are just built completely different, because the NFC, you will have a lot of competitive teams that are there in the NFC, but it's wide open. Anybody could honestly end up making the NFC Championship game, because right now, Philadelphia, they had to rework what happened last year. Now they're back in this position with Saquon Barkley and with everybody. This is the most talented Philadelphia team that can't make the Super Bowl. It's so talented. But then there's Washington, who comes up out of nowhere, and they've got talented players themselves. They're doing everything with a rookie quarterback. And by the way, Dan Quinn has been to a Super Bowl before with Atlanta. And they've taken a Matt Ryan-led quarterback with also a veteran experienced wide receiver in Julio Jones, and now with Terry McLaurin, and they're in this position again. And you know who really feels like really bad about this? And I even said this in my short, okay? I've said the only person who I would feel very salty about this whole thing is Jerry Jones. Because now you've got 2 of your former coordinators, Kellen Moore on one side, and then Dan Quinn, the head coach, on the other.
Yep.
That should make you feel really worse if you are a Dallas Cowboys fan. Because the fact that you had both these coordinators in your staff, and the Cowboys are now watching and sitting up on the couch on 2 of their division rivals in the NFC Championship game, that does not feel good about Dallas fans. But
now you got to worry about the Commanders potentially winning the division next year as well. I mean, they didn't have to worry about the Commanders and Giants for so long. Now, if the Giants can somehow find their quarterback in this draft, imagine the Giants, the Commanders, like the Cowboys are not going to be just battling it out with the Eagles anymore. They're going to battle it out with their entire division.
And I think a lot of this is going to tail on the ownership. But I want to revert back to this, is that the NFC, because of how wide open it is, look at how harder the AFC is. I mean, the AFC has to go through Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City.
Yep.
If you can't do that, you have to now go past Josh Allen and the Bills. You have to go past Lamar and the Ravens.
Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Joe Burrow and the Bengals. CJ Stroud in Houston. And there are so many quarterbacks. And this is the thing. And I've started to realize this too, is that we've watched CJ Stroud, we've watched Justin Herbert, we've watched Lamar Jackson, we've watched Joe Burrow, we've watched all these quarterbacks. And we give them so much hell for just the way that things have happened with their team. But people don't realize on the back of their heads, do you know how hard it is to even represent in the AFC in the Super Bowl? Do you know how hard that is? I have to face all these top-tier teams in the AFC, while as the NFC, I just got to build my roster. I got to build a lot of talent around it, and I can end up getting in this thing.
How do you think teams felt when Brady was in the league? Like when Brady was in the
That's
AFC,
what I'm saying.
Like you had only 3 quarterbacks that represented from the year 2000, actually 4, from the year 2000 all the way up until 2020 or 20.
Big Ben, Peyton Manning,
and that was Peyton Manning, Big Ben, and Joe Flacco.
Yeah,
and then,
those were the only 3 quarterbacks. And Joe Flacco,
those were the only 3, I think.
This is the thing. Joe Flacco only been to a Super Bowl once and won it in 2012. And that's the other thing of it is, and think about it, at that time, I mean, you had a very talented Phillip Rivers for the Chargers who only got as far as to the AFC Championship until they lost to the Patriots. And he's only faced Tom Brady and the Patriots 3 times in his career in the playoffs, where those are ones that you got to get the monkey off your back. It's not that simple. That's why I'm like, the NFC, could you imagine if either one of those quarterbacks in the AFC right now were playing in the NFC? Do you know we could have seen all these quarterbacks once in the Super Bowl? Once.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing as like when Andrew Luck was here. Like when Andrew Luck was like, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league in the AFC, and he couldn't get past Tom Brady and the Patriots.
Yeah.
So
that's why people have to look at the narrative and look at the context as big as it is, because I know a lot of the narratives is, well, Justin Herbert can't win a playoff game. CJ Stroud, for as talented as he is, the Texans apparently can't get over that. Do you know how much that we've given Lamar Jackson crap with Baltimore, and they're already talking about Mark Andrews and all the rest of this other stuff? Like, it's not that simple than people think. Hell, how do you think we're going to feel if Josh Allen loses to Kansas City? He's going to be in the same boat. But we have to realize is this is not that simple in the AFC. If Buffalo wins next weekend, do you know how much high praise Josh Allen's going to have? Do you know how?
That's
what I'm saying. It's like
Patrick Mahomes.
It's like a David and Goliath kind of thing. Whereas you got just one stone, right? And you knock out the massive giant who has been torturing the AFC now for the last 7 years. That's why I'm like, that's why the entire nation is going to be rooting for Buffalo this next
Only
week.
one active quarterback has gotten past Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. One.
Yep. Yeah. Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow. Like, he's the only active quarterback to do that. And like I'll say this and then we can go to break. So for anybody that wants to sit here and say it's very hard or it's very it sucks to do this or you got to do that. It does. It's very hard to do it in the AFC. But here's the one thing I got to tell people, and the only example that I'll give people because they want to sit here and act like, it's extremely tough. Andrew Luck went to the AFC Championship, played Tom Brady and the Patriots, and his O-line was ranked 25th in the league. Bottom like 15.
And for the 4 straight years.
Yeah,
that's
and
11-5.
His defense was ranked 30th in the league. And he made it to the AFC Championship. What does that tell you about the quarterback play and stuff? That tells you that if you have a good quarterback, regardless of how bad your defense is or offense, you have a chance to make it that very far.
And you know what's funny is that all the teams that got eliminated all through a turnover. All of them. It's like you have to play near perfect. So that's why I'm like, I just think with the NFC, it's going to be both these championships are going to be wildly entertaining because everybody's hoping Buffalo. They're crossing their fingers Buffalo wins, but in the NFC, Washington gets here. We're never going to. This is the thing, and I'll talk a little bit about Chicago as well. But when you get a team like Washington in the Super Bowl, that's content worthy for all of us. I mean, it's going to be content worthy for us, point blank, period. Because either way, Philadelphia, highly talented. They get back into the Super Bowl since 22. And then Washington, who hasn't been back in the Super Bowl since 92. So that's what, and think about it. Their last quarterback was Mark Rippon. That's the last one. So that's why I'm like, I'm very excited for this weekend. I think in the end, and I know right now you're holding your breath in tonight's game with Ohio State and Notre Dame, but at the end, I mean, there's going to be so much to talk about this week with Wednesday, Friday.
At the beginning of the game, I hated it.
Well, like I said, there's plenty of football left, so we'll see who comes up on top. But yeah, what a weekend! What a weekend it's been. Into a very absolutely, it was very. What's really good about 2025 is that our partners at BetUS is willing to give you all of the best props, all of the best betting lines, and the best in class sports book in the country for over 30 years. Okay, BetUS has been doing this for a very, very long time. And BetUS wants to give you the full inside scoop when you sign up. $50 or more into your deposit in the first 3 deposits that you put in. So the more you deposit, 125% bonuses of up to $2,000 in those bonuses when you end up signing up for a lot of these daily contests, sports betting lines, parlay leg bets, and more, and check out their award-winning sports book. Also, when you sign up, you get your very own account manager to give you the best of what BetUS is willing to give to you to start off your 2025 year. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, seek therapy in your respective states, because BetUS doesn't want you to gamble irresponsibly. They want you to enjoy the experience that BetUS is willing to give you. And especially when you got championship weekend, you've got the NBA, college basketball, NHL, so much more, and Major League Baseball up around the corner come the springtime. There's no better time to sign up now than checking out BetUS and signing up for yourself to see what they can do for you to get you on the edge of your game. BetUS, where the game begins.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
So it was official earlier, and the news that broke out is Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has been hired by the Chicago Bears. So the era in Detroit is over. So here's what I will tell you. And I know Chase, he's been saying, again, we've been noting this for the last couple of days now, that this was what was going to happen. Ben Johnson was going to take that Chicago job. Now, I'm not saying that it could not work in Chicago, but I have very close people in my corner that I messaged and thought, what is your feeling with Ben Johnson? And I'm going to get some Chicago people back up on here. Hell, even I would love to, would love to ask, hopefully if I could get up on the show, Brian Urlacher, how he would feel about an offensive coach now in Chicago. Here's the thing I will say about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is arguably one of the smartest and most creative offensive minds that you knew was a hot commodity from last year's offseason to this year's offseason. And again, lots of teams were patient on as far as hiring their head coach. The Patriots hired their head coach, and now so has the Chicago Bears. And as I've said before, I don't think it was particularly bad for the Chicago Bears to hire Ben Johnson. But my question mark is could Ben Johnson, for as smart as he is, can he have the instinct to overcome and maybe reshape a culture that has been brutally damaged for after all these years in Chicago? Mind you, this team went to the Super Bowl one time in 2006 and lost to the Colts. You guys remember how ferocious that defense was. Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs, and even when the special teams with Devin Hester. That was a fun team. But since then, they've been kind of on offense, fantastic on defense, but yet they could not even score their points to save their life. And not only that, but they were not as innovative on offense. So now that Ben Johnson is here in Chicago, my hope is that he will turn this offense around with Caleb Williams. But like I said, it's going to take more than have to shape an offense. But if Ben Johnson is clearly ready for this job, and to me, now that they've hired him, they feel like he is. But I am the kind that I watch everything. I watch players' body languages and kind of what they feel on the field or whether they're in the locker room. Okay. As I've said to a lot of people, growing up in life, and this is where you have to think about certain cultures. Okay. I'll tell you one thing, my entire hometown, we're built upon, like in Vegas, it's built upon instincts. It's also who you know. And it's also, could you overcome a lot of these adversities where it's like, the atmosphere, it's 24/7 partying down up on the strip and all the rest of it. Can you handle at least staying level-headed in a culture like this? In Chicago, here's the thing. When Chicago's winning, it makes the sports world very interesting. Okay. We watch the Bulls, we watch the Blackhawks, we watch the Cubs, the White Sox, and then the Bears. When Chicago, as a proud sports culture, when they're winning, it makes all of our content interesting. Chase and I would probably be going a month and a half worth of nonstop talking about Chicago if they're winning. But even when they're losing, we just kind of already know what Chicago's cultures look like now in the last few years. So I'm happy for Ben Johnson. I wish the best for him. But again, I got to see from body languages of the players to also what is being said in all of these interviews. Because I guarantee you, if he nails the very first interview being in Chicago, which I kind of anticipate he will, then I will feel good about the Chicago Bears' future. I will feel very good about it. Because, again, it's more than trying to get Caleb Williams to work and then trying to get a better offensive line, which hopefully Ryan Poles. And I felt like, to me personally, this is the second time now Ryan Poles needed to get this right. Remember when there was a lot of pressure on the GM where he had to go and be pro offense, had to go and get offensive line right, and then they got the quarterback, they got the wide receiver, they got the running back. You know how much force of pressure was on Ryan Poles' back? It was a lot of it. And I feel like it's happening again. They've had a defensive-minded coordinator, and Matty Eberflus clearly didn't work. Now they had to go offense because everybody's like, we need to go offense. We need to throw this television away. Now it's here. And again, another coordinator. And all I hope is that Ben Johnson really does turn this thing around. And I anticipate he probably will. Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
We talked about this in the last couple of days. Like I said, I think with what Chicago, they're in this thing now. And so another straight coordinator, offensive line. The question mark is, and like I said, I would like to because I'd hate to be cutthroat like this, but I want to see like in their mind, because of course Ben Johnson, he had to be the hire. He was the hire. But now the question mark is, can he turn this thing around to where Chicago can be competitive for not just 1 year, but for the next 5 years? I mean, I've got Green Bay, I've got Minnesota, I've got Detroit. And I mean, Detroit right now feels like the sky is falling because both their coordinators are going to potentially be out. One of them's already out. And then what does Dan Campbell do from here? I mean, that was one where I know they had a list of injuries, but this team was winning games. And like I told a lot of people, the playoffs are different than the regular season, and it's coming to fruition. Remember when the Green Bay Packers were 15-1? They were the highly hot team that was going into the playoffs, and then they lost to the first round?
Yep. No,
it can happen to anybody.
I do see that. And like, here's the first bit of news that I got, and it's making me happy about how Ben Johnson's taking this very seriously. Not only did he bring over the Lions offensive line coach, because he took the Lions offensive line coach to be his O-line coach.
Right, yeah. And
thinking about taking the QB coach from the Lions and making him in the OC. But he's already, just like today, as he has gotten hired, he's already interviewing Dennis Allen to be his defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and you know what? This is the funny thing about Ben Johnson is that I think with taking this job very seriously, it's leaving a lot of people optimistic about what he could potentially do with this organization now. And we've seen this with offensive-minded coaches. They turn out to get the best defensive coaches on the market. And listen, it may not have worked with Dennis Allen as a head coach, but I've never doubted his defensive scheme. I never doubted that he could he has a knack. And this is where Chicago's never had a problem with defense. I mean, Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, Tremaine Edmonds, they have so many very good defensive pieces I like. That's not their problem. Their problem is offensive line was horrible, and then at the same time, they couldn't get the offense really to work. And Caleb Williams is watching Jaden Daniels in the NFC Championship. He's watching Bo Nix make the playoffs. He's watched Michael Penix literally look the kind of part that an NFL quarterback should look like. And then imagine when J.J. McCarthy now starts coming out next year. So that's why you had to get this right if you're Chicago.
And with all of the offensive line free agents that are available, it's going to be interesting to see what Ryan Poles does. You know, you got Ronnie Stanley as a left tackle.
Trey Smith's a high commodity right now.
Jack Martin, the guard from the Cowboys, who's been a 7-time All-Pro, first-team All-Pro. And just imagine bringing him into this offensive line. And you got the offensive line coach for the Lions, who has had a top 5 offensive line unit.
Yep, he's worked with Penei Sewell, he's worked with Skipper, he's worked with so many other really good offensive line. Yep.
Yes, he has. And it's going to be interesting to see if they go for the free agency route or if they go even younger and they go get a guy like Calvin.
I anticipate them going both. I think they go both. I think they go both because ultimately you want a veteran that's going to be in there to be that veteran voice and get everybody on the same page so that when the rookie comes in, if they do draft an offensive tackle, which I think they should, then he's now going to be meshed in and he's going to plug into this offensive line that Chicago's trying to build. So I can anticipate them going both.
I think what they should do is they should go get Zach Martin, have him play left guard, and then move Tevin Banks over to right guard and draft like a Calvin Banks or a Will Campbell. And then in the second round, go after a running back. You got Quinshawn Judkins, Ollie Gordon. You got Travion Henderson. You got Omarion Hampton. There are so many running backs that you can go target.
Get at least an elusive back because here's the thing. As much as I like DeAndre Swift at the time, you need a secondary there. You need a secondary guy because in the end, Roschon Johnson, I mean, he's a good power back. I don't doubt that, but you need to have an elusive back. That's probably what's supposed to. And I think because being around this culture that the Detroit Lions put together is what I think is going to make Chicago very interesting next year.
Yeah, so I'm just going to keep the news on the aspect of the coaching hires or coaching searches because right now we've got 2 out of the 5 or 2 out of the 7 that are hired. Out of every coaching, carousel that we have at least 2 candidates, 2 that are very successful. Back in the 2020 coaching carousel, you have Kevin Stefanski and Mike McCarthy that were the two most successful out of those guys. Because you had Matt Rule, Joe Judge, and Ron Rivera that were also hired in there. And Kevin Stefanski and Mike McCarthy were the only ones. Going to the Jags, it's narrowing it down to two guys at this moment in time. It's Liam Cohen or Robert Saleh are the two leading candidates for that job.
So I think to me, like if it's Robert Saleh, here's what I do think is the plus side. Defense will actually be playing a lot better because you're going to watch Tavon Campbell, their corner, and then I anticipate them going and getting another corner like a Will Johnson or somebody out there in Michigan who could very much be shut down. Now, the offense, here's the other thing. You got to build confidence into Trevor Lawrence. You need to build that confidence. Now, if Robert Saleh can get the right offensive coordinator, then I think you could be in that position to where Trevor Lawrence, you're going to get the best out of him. Because this South Division is so wonky because, I mean, the Colts, I just saw it earlier, they hired Lou Anarumo for DC. I don't like it. I think that's a red flag. I think the other thing is the Titans, they're getting a new GM. Hopefully with Brian Callahan and this coaching staff, they can get Will Levis to work because they're not taking a quarterback. And then at the same time, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, they now have to fix their offensive line. But that's the only team that I could see as the top dog in this division. So if you're Jacksonville, no pressure. You just got to get the right guy to work the right side of the ball. Now, I don't think for either one of those coaches is it bad. I think Saleh really truthfully deserves a second chance after what had happened with the Jets. And it's a funny thing because we thought of the same thing with Todd Bowles at the time, and then he finally got a head coaching job with Tampa after Bruce Arians moved aside. And then you look at there was other coaches that I can't think of at the top of my head, but it has happened with them. But Robert Saleh, I think, will work his side of the ball on defense, be much more of a pressurized, shutdown type defense, especially with the way that he stacks everybody. Yeah. Like he's got a point where he could, and especially too, he got the best out of Sauce Gardner. And the second he left, it's not the same. So
and imagine if he gets Will Johnson in there.
Oh my God! Yes, that's why I'm saying if you get Will Johnson, you get Tavon Campbell, you already have. I think those corners are very, very good, but I think you've got to narrow it down and get a safety in there. I think if you get a couple very good pieces, I think this Jacksonville team would be much better. But here's the other thing: it's also not a bad idea if they get Liam Cohen because you're trying to get the offense to work. I mean, you got Brian Thomas who had a 1,000-yard season for a rookie,
and you got a $55 million quarterback that you got to get working.
Yes. And here's the funny thing. I've looked at all the quarterbacks who got paid over $50 million. Only one of them is in the championship game. That's Jalen Hurts. There's been 9 of them thus far. One is the only one that stands out. The Chargers are in perfect hands because Jim Harbaugh, we saw with what he's done, turning this team around. Imagine what this next season will look like for them. But if you could turn around Trevor Lawrence with either one of those coaches, then it will be much better. I would anticipate, and depending on, because I always look for coaching hire, free agent signings, and draft pieces to then have initially all my thoughts into who I think would win the divisions, who I think could be playoff teams. Because like I said before, and I'm still going to die on that hill on that, but I think the Patriots will be a playoff team next year over Pittsburgh. I'm serious. I think they will be.
Now we're moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders. I feel like they're gonna start interviewing more people. They are going to have to because right now the list is Ben Johnson, Vance Joseph, Robert Saleh, Aaron Glenn, Ron Rivera, Pete Carroll, and those are the ones that are completed. And they're going to be interviewing Todd Monken and Steve Spagnuolo. And out of all of those guys right now, I'd say the only one that deserves to have a shot at least trying to coach would be Todd Monken because of what he's been able to do with the Ravens offense and how well it's been put together. Because I know that Brady wanted Ben Johnson, but now that he's gone, the next offensive mind that
he wanted Mike Vrabel.
He wanted Vrabel, and he couldn't get either of them. So I think the best one, if they are going to interview Todd Monken, he'd probably be the best choice, in my opinion.
And this is the thing, and this is why with the Raiders, you have to get the coach and now the GM right. So this is why I said, okay, they obviously gave their selling pitch to both Mike Vrabel and with Ben Johnson, because they both were ones that were going to need personnel say. They both were. But now, and here's why that I feel like this is going to be, I think they've started to become the least attractive organization to honestly coach for, because here's the thing. They fired Tom Telesco, their GM, and I thought that we would have gotten a second year out of him and see if he would actually work his magic to make it work. But because you fired him, you were trying to throw out the red carpet for Ben Johnson. He ain't going there now. He's going to Chicago. So if you're the Raiders, this is why I said what I said on this program, is that as much as I love and respect Tom Brady, this is a different business you're working in. You have to get the coach and the GM right, because if you don't, and now that the two big fish are gone, now you still have a chance of Liam Cohen. You still have a chance of, you know what I've also heard that was also kind of reemerged? I don't know how truthful this is, but Pete Carroll, if he ends up coming on to the Raiders, is there a possibility that maybe Russell Wilson tags along on it? Because again, that may be interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I know Russell's wife, Sierra, would love to be in Las Vegas because of her modeling gig and because of all of like the companies that she has very close ties with. But if you bring in Pete Carroll, and I don't know how current that he may be. I know he was a very good recruiter since he was in USC. He's great with recruiting a lot of these guys, especially with the draft picks. But it's the offense that kind of seemed a little bit stagnant at the time. I never had a problem with their defense. But like I said, the Raiders right now are starting to become that very difficult destination to really fill in for a head coaching job. It would have been one thing, because again, if they had Ben Johnson, would have been totally different how we would have viewed this whole thing. And the Raiders would have been competitive. But now they're back in the same old jam again. So I don't know. This is going to be hard.
It's definitely going to be hard, and it's going to make you, kind of look and question on who is the best fit. And I think out of all those candidates, Todd Monken is probably the best candidate for that because of how well he ran his offense.
And I like Todd Monken because he does implement a pass-first type of offense. I've noticed that with how the Ravens were, even though the Ravens have always been a run-first team because they're all about the ground and pound. But
even with what he did at Georgia, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's interesting. Now you move on to the New Orleans Saints and who they've interviewed. And they've here's the ones that are completed. Mike Kafka, Giants OC, Aaron Glenn, Kellen Moore, Joe Brady, Darren Rizzi, Saints intern coach, and Anthony Weaver. The ones that they're going to interview yet, David Shaw, former Stanford coach and / Broncos senior personnel executive. Then they have an interview request for Cliff Kingsbury, which he said he's not going to take any interviews until after they are out of the playoffs. And then Mike McCarthy. And out of all of those guys, I'd say that there are 3 that are good candidates to be there. Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, and Mike McCarthy.
So I'll be honest with you, because if Washington gets to a Super Bowl, I don't see Cliff Kingsbury leaving. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think because he's building this strong relationship with Jada Daniels, that it's starting to flourish. And I think he stays there for one more year to maybe get a little bit more exposure and maybe potentially see where he lands. But I won't be surprised if he just stays there, because again, they built together a very, very good, healthy culture in Washington. I think the coach that I think could work in this is Joe Brady. Because Joe Brady, he has ties with the Saints because he was there originally before he ended up going to LSU.
It's a matter of if he wants to work with that team because they are in such turmoil.
But then who else could you trust with that? I mean, Joe Brady's seen this. He's seen this with how Mickey Loomis has put this all together. And then I think at the same time, all you got to do, and it depends on if they are or they're not going to keep Derek Carr. I think if you do keep Derek Carr, again, you've got to limit the mistakes. It's the same thing he's doing with Josh Allen. Once Ken Dorsey got fired and he came in, he had to limit Josh Allen's mistakes, and he has. And so I think the other thing is you also got Taysom Hill, who's a wild card on this offense. And then at the same time, I don't know in particular what they may do. They may go get another wide receiver depending on how Chris Olave feels. Because I know I got Rashid Shaheed for next year who will be healthy. Alvin Kamara, depending on it, whether he stays or he's trade bait somewhere. But I know Cam Jordan and I know Damari Davis, you got to cut ties. You got to save up money. Yep. And that's initially what they had to do. Now, if you got to go pro offense, then so be it. Because, again, we watched this with Dennis Allen. This was a team that, after the first 2 weeks, they were all smoke and mirrors. They couldn't even score a point to save their life.
Yep.
And that's where I was like, okay, with Joe Brady, I could see this because he has familiar ties with this organization. He's familiar with the entire Louisiana area from his connections of LSU into New Orleans. So I don't doubt that when it comes to his pipeline, when it comes to draft picks, that he's going to be able to get the best guys out of there. He probably will. But again, you got to get this offense working with New Orleans. And at the same time, you got to save some money. And I think Joe Brady is much more capable of dealing with this. Maybe the wild card would be Aaron Glenn, but I feel like Glenn might take that Jets job.
If he's offered it, yeah.
If he's offered it, yes. But I just think out of everybody else, Mike Kafka, no. Cliff Kingsbury, no. I just don't see him leaving. And several other, I think Joe Brady would arguably be the only best that I could see.
Except for Mike McCarthy. I think he'd be a good one too.
Mike McCarthy would be another one because it gives you stability. I mean, I could see that. Because you've got to move off a lot of these other high-priced contracts to build stability. So I could see Mike McCarthy be a guy like that. But yeah, those are.
We'll move on to the Dallas job. There's only 4 interviews that they've had. 3 of them are complete. And, don't rule out this last guy that I'm going to mention. Kellen Moore, Leslie Frazier, and Robert Saleh have all interviewed with the Dallas Cowboys. But Ian Rappaport did report that the Cowboys are flying over in person to talk to Deion Sanders personally. So it is very interesting to see how that's going to play out. Right now, everybody thinks that Kellen Moore is the top candidate for that job. But, like I said, do not count out Deion Sanders.
I wouldn't count out Deion Sanders out of this Dallas job, and the only reason of that is because knowing Jerry, he loves his Dallas boys. But the problem of it is I think Joel Klatt put this together in a recent interview with Colin Cowherd on the show, and he was talking about, like, look at what you built in Colorado. You've taken a team who on average would win 1 to 2 games every year, change the culture, and here's the other thing. You're in no fear of losing your job if you're in college football because you are turn a program from its irrelevant state to now winning more games and getting into bowl games. And the other thing is the players choose you. Right? When you're recruiting, the players are the ones that are going to choose you to where they want to go to school at. Because the second they hear about Deion Sanders, they're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to Deion. So that's the one thing is that college football. And the other thing is the contract situations. I think Deion would earn more in college than he would be in the NFL, even though the NFL is definitely high priced. But would you rather feel comfortable of the sake of building 5 years with Colorado without any pressure, with your own personal say, and with the salary that you're at, than be on a one-and-done potential deal in Dallas if things go wrong? That's the part I think Joel Klatt really hit the nail on the head with. Because do you really think anybody wants this Dallas job with Jerry Jones right now up on the helm, knowing that? Because, and see, this is the question. If Jerry Jones is flying out here to Colorado in Boulder, would he or would he not give up personnel say?
He would, and he also probably would, make Deion one of the highest paid coaches and give him the opportunity if he wants to get rid of Dak Prescott and get his son in there, there's a possibility. If we know that if that news breaks and Deion Sanders gets hired as the Dallas Cowboys head coach, Deion Sanders is going to have his say in personnel. And he's going to have his say on if he wants his son there or not.
And I will say, because Deion did say in an interview that he would take it if it's offered.
And he said he would also take it if he gets to coach his sons, plural.
Well, we shall see. I mean, to me personally, of course, nobody wants to deal with that Dak Prescott contract. Nobody does.
Nope.
So that's why I'm like, if you easily move off of that, Dak's going to get over it, and like I said, I could see him maybe potentially go to the Giants if that was an indicator if they can't get Cam Ward. Because if that's the case, Brian Dable, who has worked with quarterbacks of his stature like that, with Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, and then having to work with Dak Prescott, it could work. I could see the Giants maybe potentially win more games. And here's the other thing. He's got a multitude of weapons to work. You just got to fix that offensive line to get a run game. So I think that could potentially work. But again, I think I started laughing about how much the Kellen Moore news started reemerging, because it's just like they're trying to prove to themselves that Kellen Moore was the wrongful fire. And it was just like, well, I've heard mixed responses from Cowboys and Eagles fans out there, how they truthfully feel about Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, dude, the Cowboys, I don't know. But it's certainly a lot to think about with them, because again, if they give Deion the job, my hope is Jerry gave up his personnel say, because again, like I said, when the players choose you in college, where they want to go to school at and where they want to potentially either win a bowl game, win games, or even, up their potential draft stock. That's the one thing in college. But then when you're in the NFL, you got to choose the player. When you go into that draft in that war room, you know what I mean? Because Jerry, the hard part is Jerry Jones, and he harps about this all the time. Look at our latest drafts. We have not missed on a lot of our draft picks. That's the part that I'm questioning if Jerry Jones is willing to give up that power. Because you're going to be in that war room, and you're going to be in this draft, and there's a lot of talks. Ashton Genty, an offensive line, a wide receiver. There's a lot of question marks there. So that's why I'm like, if he's willing to give up that power and that say, that'll make Dallas very interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting. And the reason why I wanted to make this the news for the day is just because I knew that, a lot of the coaching hires are around the corner. There's a lot of guys that are out of the playoffs now that I knew were going to be hired very shortly. And now comes the Jets list, a long list of candidates. But before that, right before halftime, it's 21-7 Ohio State. They get the ball back after halftime and everything. So we'll see how that goes and see if they can finish out strong. Moving on to the Jets hires, here's the interviews that they have completed. And out of all of this list, there's only about 4 guys on here that I really trust. And let's see if you can figure out who I'm thinking. You got Matt Nagy, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, Steve Spagnuolo, Mike Costley, Maryland's head coach, Aaron Glenn, Darren Rizzi, Vance Joseph, Bobby Slowick, Arthur Smith, Jeff Halfley, Josh McCown, Joe Witt Jr., and Brian Flores. The ones that they're going to interview, Joe Brady and Brian Griese, the Niners quarterback coach.
So
out of all those candidates, what are the 4 that I'm thinking of that would be a good fit?
Oh boy. I think Brian Flores would be a very good fit.
That's one of them. Yep.
Because I think because you're not going to try to take that defense for granted, you're going to reshape it and make it better. And I truthfully think it'll be just like Saleh, where he's going to get the best out of his defense. So I think Brian Flores will be one of them. I think truthfully, I think Joe Brady could be one.
That's another one. Yep.
Yep. Joe Brady is one. Aaron Glenn, I could see it. We had talked about this. And then as far as the 4th, I know you've heard me say about Rex Ryan because he has familiarity with this organization. and the last time that they were winning when he was a head coach. It was the last time that the Jets were even winning. But I think as far as the others, Bobby Sloak, no. That Maryland coach, oh hell no. Why am I
Dude, I don't know.
that was maybe one of those coaching interviews that's way out of left field that I'm like, why? I've got at least 3 of 4, so I'm just thinking.
The last one that I'm thinking of is Vance Joseph.
I don't know. I mean,
I think Vance Joseph could be a good fit, but I do think that they are going to go with an offensive-minded guy this time because they went with the defensive route.
They could, but I think you honestly, like, if you hire Aaron Glenn or Rex Ryan, those are culture guys. Okay,
Yeah.
That's 2. If you hire offensive, I trust Joe Brady.
Yep.
I would also trust Liam Cohen. And if you hire a defensive-minded coach, Brian Flores would be one that I would trust. And now, again,
Josh McCown would be interesting. I would like to see how he is.
Josh McCown would be, and he has played in this organization before, and he has seen the ups and the downs of what the Jets have looked like, in the past. I mean, you got to think about it. Between Josh McCown and even with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the time, we all saw what those Jets teams looked like. So, yeah, I would probably put Josh McCown in that list. But I think ultimately, just the Jets need to build consistency. You know who I would throw in there as far as stability? Mike McCarthy. I think I would.
I haven't interviewed him yet, which I'm kind of shocked that they haven't.
Yeah, that is it. Well, unless if that's because they've heard the ear from Aaron Rodgers, which I wouldn't even be surprised either.
I mean, that's true, but I don't think that they're going to keep Aaron Rodgers. I think that he's either going to retire or they're going to release him, one of the two.
I think they did say, and I think they're probably waiting until all of this is done when they get into the fully off season, and I think that's where I think they are going to move off of Aaron Rodgers. But again, I wouldn't leave out Mike McCarthy if that was the case, because if you need to build stability, I mean, that's what Jet fans have been kind of crying for a while, is stability, because it just seems like it's up, down, up, down, up, down, and it's like they can't seem to figure themselves out. So
there's one guy on their GM list that I would actually like to see him get a job.
Yeah.
And that would be Mike Greenberg, the assistant Buccaneers GM.
Yeah, Mike Greenberg's a pretty good one.
Yeah, Mike Greenberg is the one that I would like to see them hire for their GM list.
So here's my thing, and I've heard this too. If Rex Ryan's given the job, then Louis Riddick would be the one getting the GM job, which would be, and listen, that might be
talking about another John Gruden, Mike Mayock thing.
It could be, and like I said, I'm not ruling that out, but that could be interesting. Or, like I said, I've heard some good things about Ed Dodds over in Indy.
He's not on the list, but that would be a great candidate.
I think he would be, and the other thing was, I think there was they've also, I've heard some things about the Chargers assistant GM, who was right next to Joe Ortiz, and I've heard some very good things about him too. They said because they've been in personnel back in Baltimore and like all the rest of it, they said he was actually a very good commodity when it came to Joe Ortiz getting the GM job, and he needed his right-hand man. That assistant GM over there at the Chargers is really, really good. I believe his name is Carpenter, something like that. But he's also a very good one. Same pedigree as Baltimore. So that could be a potential very good hire. But yeah, I think for the Jets, you just got to find stability.
Yeah, and as far as how everything is going right now, I think if I'm going to predict where the candidates are going to be, I think it's going to be Kellen Moore for the Cowboys, Aaron Glenn for the Jets if they offer it to him. Yep. For the Saints, that's interesting.
So maybe let's do that. Let's do that as our last piece for the show. Let's see if we can predict it, because I think we could. I think we could definitely. I think you and I would probably have different responses, but we can think about it.
So okay, if we're gonna do that, then the first two that I said, I am going with Kellen Moore for the Cowboys, and I'm going with Aaron Glenn for the Jets. Okay. And as far as the Saints go, they are always the people that, give the weirdest hires out of everybody. And this is where I see Mike Kafka actually getting a job.
Yeah.
It's going to be some left field hire and everything. And out of all the people that they've interviewed for the Raiders job, I see them choosing Todd Monken to be their guy. And then for the Jags, I see Robert Saleh being the guy.
Okay, so
if you need the list again, I got it in front of me to get.
I think we'll be okay with this one. So here's what I would feel. So we've already had 7 openings this year. 2 of them have already been filled, Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson. So those are done.
Yep.
Okay. So I do want to start with the New York Jets. And I think, to me personally, the one thing I love about the Jets is that they've got a lot of very good talent I like. They just need to get some stability in this building. And I feel like Aaron Glenn would be the perfect fit for this team. A wild card that I could potentially see really working with this would be Brian Flores. The only reason of this is because I need an alpha male in this organization again. Because we thought we had an alpha male with Robert Saleh at the time until Aaron Rodgers just literally told him to kick rocks. And so now you get Aaron Glenn. I mean, yeah, as a defensive-minded coach, he even came out and said, like, look, I am a coach, period. Okay, whether offensive or defensive. I think in the end, he's going to rework this defense. And to me personally, even with him being around the Detroit Lions, I could see him getting better at corner because I think DJ Reed is going to test the market. But I think you've got to get a capable number 2 next to Sauce Gardner. And then the other thing is, what's the question mark on Garrett Wilson? Because, again, if you trade away Garrett Wilson, you're going to get a multitude of picks. You're going to get a lot of very good draft capital, and they'll be in a prime spot to where they can go and get another wide receiver. Because right now, the wide receiver market is going to be out of this world. Because there's going to be a lot of trade rumors. There's going to be a lot of free agent pickups, and there's also going to be a lot of very good draftees out there who would be very attractive. So I think Aaron Glenn would work for this. My wild card would be Brian Flores. Now, the New Orleans Saints. 2 guys that come to mind, in my opinion, that I think could work for this would be Joe Brady. And the only reason, he has familiarity with this organization. And I think part of this is because he's seen with how Mickey Loomis really spent up a lot of the money on defense in particular and the offensive line. I mean, they had Cesar Ruiz, but then they also had a couple of other guys. But at the same time, I mean, I love Tyrese Kawagi. I think the guy is going to be a very, very good offensive lineman. So that's one start from there. But I've lost both my receivers all season. And then the question mark is, do you trade or do you keep Alvin Kamara? Because that's also another trade bait piece from there. Because I need a strong offensive line. I need some capable offensive weapons. And I got to get fluidity in that offense. So I think Joe Brady would be a very good hire. My wild card after him, if that became the case and I need a backup plan, I think Liam Cohen would actually work for this. Because there's not a ton of pressure in New Orleans. The South is basically kind of wonky. And the other thing is, Liam Cohen, because he'll stay in the same division as Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that could be a way to shake up Tampa, but then at the same time, be competitive over Carolina and be competitive over Atlanta. So, and by the way, Atlanta, they just hired Jeff Ulbrich as the DC. So they're getting some help. So that's why I'm like, if you're New Orleans, I could see Joe Brady be a very good commodity, and then I could also see Liam Cohen be a wild card. So the next would be the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep, this is a tricky one.
This is the difficult one because now you've got to look for both a GM and a coach. And so to me,
they've only interviewed 7 people.
Yeah, that's right.
Vance Joseph, Robert Saleh, Aaron Glenn, Ron Rivera, Pete Carroll, and then they got Todd Monken that they're interviewing, and Steve Spagnuolo.
So I think of this way. I think I'm with you on this one. I think this could work for Todd Monken because it's especially as an offensive-minded guy. We've seen the other thing is like what the Chargers did getting Jim Harbaugh, and then they go and get a personnel from the Baltimore Ravens. Now you could see some of those same identical prints that the Ravens going up into the Chargers, and then the same thing when you get Todd Monken to come from Baltimore to the Raiders. I think maybe you could build upon a staff that's going to be very competent. Another one that I think could also be very, very good as far as building players, building up a lot of their youngsters. So I think they'd be good for it. And then my wild card, I think to me, I could see Pete Carroll going.
Yeah.
I could see Pete Carroll going there because in the end, it would be, if you don't get a quarterback in this draft, then you're better off getting one in free agency, at least a competent one. I know how people feel about Russell Wilson, and all the rest of it, but if they somehow come back together and then they're in Las Vegas, that could, and again, there's no guarantee that this team would be competitive with the three other teams right now ahead of them, the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. So I think, truthfully, I think Tom Monken would be the hot commodity, and then my wild card would be Pete Carroll. I think the other spot that I think is interesting is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So to me, I feel like the hot commodity that would work would be Brian Flores. Only reason of this is because offensively, it's going to give Trevor Lawrence some confidence. At the same time, you got to get the smart offensive coach next to him. But I think the defense will be a lot better. They got Josh Hines-Allen. They've also got Tavon Campbell. And if you went and drafted Will Johnson, the corner, I think the Jags would be in much better shape. And they're also in another wonky division in the AFC South. So I think Brian Flores could be a very good hiring pickup in Jacksonville. Not a ton of pressure. And I think the other thing is, too, you're hoping that him and Trent Baalke really do work as a coach and GM combo. Because there's going to be parts of that I think Brian Flores wants personnel say. So I think that could work for him. And then my wild card would probably be Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, only because I think he just screams to me like a Florida guy. If I seen him in Tampa, I could see him work in Jacksonville. So yeah. And then did we get all the openings? What did we get? 4 already, or is there's one more that's out there, isn't there?
Jags.
Yeah, we did the Jags. We did the Jags.
We did the Cowboys.
The Saints. Oh, the Cowboys one. Okay, so the Cowboys one. Hard for me too.
Yeah.
Because those are probably the two of the toughest, the Raiders and the Cowboys. The Cowboys, to me, I could see them hiring Kellen Moore. I feel like they're going to try to rewrite the wrong. And at the same time, it's going to be another one of those Jerry hires that wants somebody who obviously has been a part of this personnel, knows exactly how this stuff works in Dallas. But then the other wild card, I would say, could be Deion Sanders. If they strike a deal, if they actually are reasonable on the deal. But I would not be surprised if Kellen Moore is in fact the guy that they do decide to hire. That's just such a Jerry Jones thing. And like I said, when has Jerry Jones ever looked outside his field of vision? When has he ever done that? He's never, I don't think he's ever listened to any outside personnel than what he has internally with Dallas. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. Because Jason Garrett, former quarterback, head coach, Kellen Moore, former quarterback, offensive coordinator. And I think that's really, truthfully, about it. And if it was Deion Sanders, former Cowboy corner, and only thing that I could see as being a jam is if Jerry's not willing to give up personnel say. That's the only thing that I could say could be a problem in that deal. If he does not give up personnel say, then Deion's not going to leave Colorado.
No, I mean, if he does not say that he will give up personnel and then he will trade Dak Prescott, and so they could trade up and draft his son, I don't see Deion coming.
No,
And I think
I don't even want to be a part of that circus.
I think that the only time the Cowboys will be successful and have a final successful team is when Jerry Jones finally hangs it up and Stephen Jones takes over. Because Stephen Jones was the one that told his dad not to draft Johnny Manziel. And who did they get instead? They got Zach Martin.
Which, Zach Martin, to me, I think Zach Martin more than anything, I think he's going to retire. I think it just feels like it may be the one thing to do because, he's very good. Don't get me wrong. He's a very good guard. But I feel like there's going to be a part of him that I think he's kind of ran up his time. And that's where Dallas really has to figure that out.
I think he's got 2 years.
All right.
If Ben Johnson can get this Bears team turned around and make it like the Commanders this year, I'm sure as hell Zach Martin would love to be part of that team.
Mm-hmm. I think he would. And I think at the same time, you get a veteran, trustworthy voice. Honestly, I think Zach Martin would probably pan out better than Tyron Smith if you really want my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I want Tyron Smith with the Jets, and no, I think his time's really just kind of ran up. No, but Dallas, the Dallas and the Raiders job is probably arguably the worst, probably the toughest jobs to really be a part of.
I also say the Saints. I'd have to throw them in the mix of the worst jobs just because they are $63 million in cap.
Yeah.
They are too tight end players.
But have the Saints though had a problem with personnel say though?
They have not had a problem with the personnel say.
That's why I think that the Saints is kind of more in the middle because it could be a great job if you get the right guy in there. But if you get another coordinator like Dennis Allen, then it becomes a bad job.
But you also got to get whoever comes into that Saints job, you got to give him at least 4 years. You got to give him 4 years because like with this, the way that the cap is there, if they get rid of a lot of players to free up some cap space and you start over, you've got to wait until you can build up the team again. And then you also got to get a quarterback in there. And you've got to let that guy just cook.
Well, and like I said, I think they did one thing right by getting rid of Marshawn Lattimore. They got that contract off them. Now they got to at least get, because I don't think, honestly, they should honestly take a page of what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what the Buffalo Bills did this offseason. They completely ripped apart their defensive personnel and they got younger. That's the one difference. Because I just think with the Saints, if you're watching Buffalo right now and they're in the AFC Championship with a young defense, take a page from there.
Yep.
They got rid of Jordan Poyer. They got rid of Micah Hyde. They got rid of Tre'Davious White. They got rid of a lot of expensive injury-prone contracts. So that's why I think if the Saints really want to do better, that's a page they got to take off of. Just just revert to what the Buffalo Bills did this offseason. And it's working. So, yeah, like I said, I think it could be a good job, but if they get the hiring wrong, then it could be pretty much a bad job.
Yep.
That's why they're stuck in the middle for me. I think the better job as of right now would be the Jacksonville job because there's not a whole lot of pressure there, and that South is wonky. I think, and then I truthfully think the Jets job, as long as because again, you need a stabilizer in this organization, somebody who presents themselves as an alpha male, and somebody that I think could really shape up this organization to get them right. So those may be so if I had to break down the five, my two favorites as of right now would be Jacksonville and the Jets. In the middle would be the Saints job because it could be it's a roll of the dice. It could go either way. And then my two that I'm not very strong about is Dallas and the Raiders. Those are the only two jobs. And what's so ironic about this is because the Raiders have so much cap.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, you get the hiring wrong, and as much as I love Tom Brady, that's not going to look good for the Raiders. That's not.
Nope.
especially when I got the Chargers who got Jim Harbaugh and the Broncos who just drafted a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. All three of those teams are now competitive. What are you going to do, Vegas? That's the part where you cannot afford to screw that up. You got so much money in the cap. You have plenty of options to really sign if you think about it, because it's the quarterback. You got a dual tight end set that I really like.
If you really want a quarterback that badly, trade up with Cleveland. Give them a first round pick. Give them a third rounder or fourth rounder this year. And then they'll trade back to 6 with you. You can pick up Shador. And then there you go. You don't have to worry about a quarterback issue. You can go get like a Amari Cooper, a Stephon Diggs.
You'll have your quarterback for the future. That's the thing. You'll have a quarterback for the future because, again, if you're bringing in, they've already done this before. They brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. That didn't work. They brought in, they tried making Derek Carr work. But remember, I think the only coach who really worked in the Derek Carr era was Jack Del Rio. That's the only one I can think of. Because when John Gruden was here, it was just wonky. And then when they had the interim coach and Rick Bisaccia, I mean, they were just a team that was just felt like they were on cloud 9. They got rid of the stuff that was going on with Gruden and the stuff that and then eventually they ran Derek Carr out of town the second that Josh McDaniels came in. Josh McDaniels couldn't work. John Gruden couldn't work. So Jack Del Rio was the only one to make Derek Carr work. The only one. And that was at a time when Khalil Mack, Bruce Irvin, and several other very good defensive pieces I liked at the time when they were in Oakland, that was actually a pretty good team. It was unfortunate because Derek Carr went down with that leg injury, and then Connor Cook had to come in that playoff game, and they lost. So, again, I think that if Derek Carr, if he didn't get hurt in the middle of that, the Raiders would not have this problem. And this is 20 years, 20-plus years going on, that this has been a problem. People would think that, I have such a deep-rooted hate for the Raiders. I don't. I just have seen the mediocrity. I've for whatever reason, it's hard for me to buy into how serious the Raiders are when I've seen them actually make big swings in the offseason, and they've missed every one of them. It's hard for me to get behind it. It really is. So,
yeah.
But again,
it's insane to think about, if Mike Mayock actually made the right choice when it came to drafting and everything, how good the Raiders could actually be right now.
Yeah. Well, even with previous GMs. I mean, that's why it was it threw me off when Tom Telesco got fired. Because this is a man responsible for drafting Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers-Johnson. The only knock is after the third round, he was limited. That was his wall, was after the third round.
Well, I guess they want to get a GM that could have the late round gems, like a Les Snead.
Yeah, Les Snead, Brett Veach.
Howie Roseman.
Hell, even Joe Ortiz. I mean, think about it. Tarheeb Steele and Cam Hart were absolute hits. And all you're waiting for now is just Brendan Rice. But, yeah, Les Snead, Brett Veach. You know what? Even I'm going to throw in Jason Light in there. Tampa's been very good. And think about it. Tampa went and got themselves a potential number 2 receiver with Jalen McMillan once Chris Godwin went down. But then the other thing is, he's actually had a very good hit of late rounders. I just watch by some of these organizations with their GMs, and it's are they built for just the big talents, or are they built for more of you get the one talented guy in that position, either one, and then you build depth in the most important positions that eventually you may draft later. You know what I mean? So that's That's why, I mean, those are the most respected GMs in this league. So, yeah, I just think, well, remember when it felt like Seattle with John Snyder? Remember when he had Reek Woolen and he had Devin Witherspoon and he had a lot of other really good, talented back-end draft picks that actually all hit?
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago? Oh, my God. So if I get a moment like that, if I'm the Raiders, maybe I'll be in good hands.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Quinshon Judkins got the ball coming out after halftime, and he had a 85-yard run almost.
Oh, my God.
And they're on the 5-yard line about to score.
So
they're going to go up 3 scores.
So what did I tell you? 2 scores, and it's over. I'm telling you. It's hard. And let's talk about that for a while. We have a few minutes at least. But this is what we've been saying about Ohio State all season long. This is arguably the team built to win.
Win it all.
Because yes, and that's the thing. Last year with Michigan, it was Michigan versus everybody else. They all knew they were on a mission. This was their assignment. They didn't care if it was Ohio State. They didn't care if it was Bama or if it was Washington. They had an assignment, and they did that. Ohio State, because of the talent on their roster, and they added in more because of the NIL money, once they added in more, they were in good hands. And that's why I'm like, this is why that I think next season, Penn State will be that team that I feel like could be on the come up. Because I'm telling you, because with Drew Aller back, yes, they're losing Tyler Warren, and yes, they're losing Abdul Carter, but I don't doubt that they're going to fill in those spots. I mean, Penn State, James Franklin, we know, kind of has that hindering record on him that he wants to get back at this battle. And they weren't that terrible against Notre Dame. It was penalties, and it was, like I said, if it wasn't for that Drew Aller throw, Penn State would be in here. But
yeah, we'd have a Big Ten championship.
Yes, we would.
Matchup.
Now, I think if Ohio State wins this one, of course, Ohio State's going to get crowned. But I think the other thing that I think is going to come into the conclusion is give Marcus Freeman another year in college.
The Big Ten is back.
Look at how big. Do you know how many teams were actually patiently waiting on Marcus Freeman? There was an article about that where there was a few teams that were actually waiting on this Ohio State Notre Dame game because they were paying attention to Marcus Freeman. He's turned that program around for Notre Dame. And even for a Catholic school like Notre Dame that's very intense to get into, from Brian Kelly to Marcus Freeman, if you looked at his first 3 years, he's actually turned that program to where, even as an independent conference, that's a pretty damn good culture.
Touchdown.
There you go.
3 scores. 3 scores. Ohio State is up by.
And you are going to be now flying in cloud 9 by the time that we get on this show on Wednesday.
Hopefully.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Good Lord. See, this is why I say we're starting the year off at 2025. Where you're going to learn some stuff, my friend. That's why I keep saying, I'm like, because it's like, and we have the entire offseason of the NFL right after all this is cleared up. We haven't even spoken about the NBA once on this show, not a ton. But then Major League Baseball, there's going to be some hockey talk. And for the record, because 2025 is our year where we're going to get a lot. You know what's funny is we're going to bring in a lot of great interviewing candidates. We're going to have a lot of great interviewing candidates because we've had a very good 2024 year. There was a lot of people that we interviewed that were fantastic. I think we're going to double down on this year. There's going to be a lot of people we're going to bring in. Hell, if I could get the big fish and Brian Urlacher, and I have very close people who have actually interviewed him in the past, if we get Brian Urlacher in here and we talk about Chicago, do you know how many viewerships we will go through the roof? And a defensive player who would be talking about an offensive-minded coach and talk a little bit more about his son in Notre Dame. Yeah. That's why I'm like, You know what I mean? That's why I'm like 2025. That is our goal. That is our goal this year, is to double down on all of our interviewing candidates. Every single one of them. So I'm excited about it. But yeah, oh yeah, man. That's what I'm saying. We're taking that by storm.
And with the potential move that I'm having, man.
Yeah. Hey, think about it this way. In a couple months, I will be moving into a new spot, which means my office is back.
I would probably be moving down to Columbus. That's why my wife and I went down there today.
Oh,
so
there you go. Look at that. We've got some potential moves on both our ends. I'm gonna be in a place where I've got my office back, and look, I'm customizing this whole thing. New table, probably some new monitors here and there.
Doing that in your bedroom or something?
It's got a third bedroom in there. So that's where it's like, again, we'll have one that'll be potentially for the baby's room, and then another one, obviously, with all my work. And my work. Sometimes you just gotta, yeah. And by the way, first floor. Thank God.
Hey, apartment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nice. First floor. I never have to deal with the stairs ever again. But then again, I will say, I will feel like there's times I feel like Jim Harbaugh. No elevators, take the stairs. I'll feel like that. But that may be more for workout purposes, more than anything else. All righty, folks. Well, appreciate everybody for being up on here on tonight's show with Chase and myself, with Ohio State currently on the big time lead, coaching hires. God, we're going to be stacked with this by the time the NFL season's over.
Yeah.
Off-season moves, more coaching hires. My hope is this NBA gets on the page, man. I really hope that they actually get their act together, because NFL is always throwing in content that we're going to be talking about like almost every single year. So let's hope they could get their act right. But other than that, show sponsored by BetUS. $50 or more in your deposit when you use BetUS, of up to $2,000 with 125% bonuses. The more you deposit, the more chances of you to win. Check it out for yourself. Also on SeatGeek.com. Download the mobile device through Google Play and the App Store, and use, please, to start 2025 in the right way. Because concert shows are already coming out, and we're actually I actually just used SeatGeek not too long ago. So we're going to be going to a concert in April, and it's actually one of my wife's favorite bands. We're going to go see The Used. Actually, one of her favorite groups. So that's going to be a fun one. But we use SeatGeek, and when you use SeatGeek, use promo code SnakeSports for $20 off on your first purchase of your first ticket. With Chase and myself, have a great rest of your night. We'll see you guys on Wednesday here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone. Oh yeah. We have to literally recoup after tonight and then the next day. Take care, everyone.